Hey ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video from your famous math teacher. Yeah, just kidding. I know you're thinking, yeah, right. Alright, today we're going to be comparing fractions, and by the end of this you should be able to compare two fractions using the greater than, less than, or equal to sign. And I know you've got it when you can correctly answer at least two of the three exit ticket questions. And the questions are going to look like this, as you see at the bottom of the screen, where you're going to have a fraction, and then you'll have a circle, and then another fraction, and then that's where you put the less than, equal to, or greater than sign. That was nice in yellow highlighter. Yeah, that's going to change. Alright, so you should know the routine by now, where you're going to get your spiral out and you need to label your table of contents. This is like the part one of two videos, because we're going to put comparing and ordering fractions together. Comparing will go on page 29, and then ordering, which will be on a second video, on to page 30. So it'll just be those two things. They have a lot of things in common, and so go ahead and pause it and get just comparing fractions notes glued into your spiral on page 29, and then come back. Alright, so comparing fractions. When we compare fractions, we first have to determine the least common multiple of the denominators. So that's why you just finished LCM of two numbers or three numbers. So we're going to have two fractions, and we're just going to look at the denominators. And then we're going to write equivalent fractions, and then you're going to compare the numerators. Okay? And we'll, again, use the inequalities, greater than, less than signs to make the expressions. Alright, for your notes. So first of all, if you're comparing fractions and they already have the same denominator, then if the denominator is the same, then the fraction with the biggest numerator not B. Is the biggest. Okay, and you'll see that in our examples. But here's where it gets tricky. If they have different denominators, first you have to find the least common multiple, LCM, of the denominators, and then we create equivalent fractions using that least common multiple as your new denominator. Okay, and then you compare your fractions, because then you would just compare the numerators, because the denominators would be the same. Okay. So what does that look like? So the first thing, this example one, I'm looking at the denominators, and the denominators are 4. And since those are the same, then we just compare the 2 and the 3. And so, obviously, since 2 is smaller than 3, then we would say 2/4 is less than 3/4. So how does this work? In cooking, if you have this 1/4 cup, okay? So here's 1/4, here's 2/4. So I'm comparing that to the 3/4 cups. and they would be equal size. Obviously my pictures are horrible because I don't draw very well. That's why I teach math and not art. Alright, so here when the denominators are different, we have to find the LCM of 3 and 4. Okay, so you can either use the list strategy or the cakewalk. And if I do the cake, then there isn't a number that I can divide into each of these besides 1, and so I just multiply them. And so the LCM is 12. So that means my new denominator is going to be 12. Then I make equivalent fractions. So I have 2/3, and what I'm going to do is use that new denominator of 12. So what do I do to 3 to get to 12? Well, I multiply it by 4. And so I have to do that same thing to my numerator, and I take 2 times 4. So 2/3 is really equal to 8/12. On the other side, I have 2/4, and I'm going to use my LCM again of 12 as my new denominator. Some people call it LCD, or least common denominator. Okay, and so what do we do to 4 to get to 12? Well, I multiply it by 3. And so whatever I do to my denominator, I have to do the same thing to my numerator. This is how we make equivalent fractions. So 2 times 3 is 6. So now I'm comparing this 8/12 and 6/12. Well, obviously 8 is more than 6, because again I have my common denominators, and so 8/12 is greater than 6/12. So that means 2/3 is greater than 2/4. Next example. I'm looking at my denominators, and again I have 5 and 15. And I know 5 will go into 15. So the LCM is going to be 15, just to prove my point. Okay. And I multiply these, right? So 5 times 1 is 5, times 3, 15. So my new denominator is going to be 15. So 3/5, I have to make equivalent fractions, is equal to 5 times 3 is 15, so 3 times 3 is 9. Well, the other one already has the denominator of 15, so I really don't have to do anything to it. 3/5 is the same thing as 9/15, and the other one is 9/15, so these are equal. Next example. Again, first thing I need to look at is my denominator, and I have 15 and I have 6. So 15 and 6. I know that both of those can be divided by 3. 5 and 2. And 5 and 2 are both prime, so I'm done. So again, I'm going to multiply these. And 3 times 5 is 15, times 2 equals 30. So my new common denominator is going to be 30. So I have 13 over 15. I'm going to use that 30 as my new common denominator. And what do we do to 15 to get to 30? We multiply it by 2. So 13 times 2 is 26. So 13/15 is equal to 26 over 30. Likewise, 5/6. Again, I'm going to make an equivalent fraction with my new common denominator of 30. So I say take 6 times 5 to get to 30. And I have to do the same thing. Some people might call this the magic 1. because you're multiplying it by 1. Okay, so 5 times 5 is 25. So 5/6 is equal to 25/30. So comparing 26/30 and 25/30, 13/15 is greater than, because the 26 is greater than 25. Alright, you're going to get your whiteboard, and you're going to show these two to me on your whiteboard. Okay, and let me check it. So pause the video, complete these. Don't shut it all the way down, because you're going to come back to this video. Right? Complete these problems, pause it, and come and show me. Alright, so if you've made it this far in the video, that means you've completed the whiteboard practice. And now you're going to go to the mailbox and get worksheet number 3. Worksheet number 3 has both comparing and ordering. So I only want you to complete the top part, just as it says right here, top part only. Complete the top part and then bring it to me. I'll grade it, and then you can complete your exit ticket. After your exit ticket, then you can work on IXL, which would be I6 and I7. That's the comparing fractions with like and unlike denominators. Or if you want to get into some harder work, that would be comparing fractions and word problems. If you want to try the ones in 7th grade, you can, but otherwise you can just stick with these two, or you can work on some other skills that you may need help with. Alright, I believe that this is the end. It is, so don't forget. Go Hawks!